On a sub-zero January night in Boston, a 16-year-old girl had only $18 in her pocket and her mother's old blanket. But when she saw an elderly woman in a nightgown shivering in the snowstorm, she was forced to choose: walk away to save herself, or stay to save a stranger. And that very moment changed 3 lives forever. Her name was Mia Carter, only 16, yet her eyes carried a weariness that many adults had never experienced. 3 years earlier, Mia's mother had passed away from heart disease. With no relatives left and nowhere to go, Mia entered the foster care system. But when she turned 16, she was asked to leave to make room for younger children. An empty backpack, a few old clothes, exactly $18, and her mother's wool blanket. That was all Mia had. From temporary housing to shelters, then to freezing subway stations, Mia lived through nights where even her breath turned into white mist. For a homeless child, survival sometimes meant avoiding suspicious looks and staying away from the police, who had questioned her many times like a troublemaker simply for wandering at night. But in the middle of a vast city, no one knew that her young heart still held one thing life hadn't managed to steal: compassion. And that very thing was about to pull Mia into a moment no 16-year-old should ever have to face. Near midnight, as Mia was walking along the red brick slopes of Beacon Hill, the wealthiest neighborhood in Boston, a strange sound made her stop in her tracks. A faint moan blended into the whistling wind. Not a cat, not a drunk person either. Mia squinted toward the narrow alley between 2 old townhouses. It was so dark she couldn't see anything except a thick, solid mass of black. But that weak moan echoed again. "Help. Please. Someone help me." Mia's heart tightened. Her mind told her to keep walking. Don't interfere. Don't get involved. That was the first survival rule for kids on the street. Don't stick your nose into other people's business, especially at night. But her feet stepped into the alley on their own. Under the dim streetlight, Mia saw a small figure curled against the wall. An older woman with messy silver hair, wearing a thin nightgown, her feet in fuzzy slippers soaked with snow. Her whole body shook like a leaf hammered by the wind. The older woman clutched a picture frame with cracked glass, her hands trembling so hard she could barely keep hold of it. Mia gently crouched down. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Are you lost?" The older woman looked up, her eyes cloudy with confusion. "I have to find my daughter, Lauren. She's waiting for me. I'm late. I can't be late." Mia froze. An older woman in a nightgown, standing alone in a snowy midnight on a wealthy street, clearly lost, clearly unable to keep walking, and clearly in danger. There was no one else on the street, no cars, no lights in the windows, just 2 people adrift in the brutal cold. That was the moment Mia had to choose: turn her back to protect herself, or step forward to grasp a desperate, trembling hand. Mia knelt beside the older woman, trying to keep her voice gentle even though her heart was pounding. "Ma'am, my name is Mia. Do you remember where your home is?" The older woman shook her head weakly, tears rolling down from helplessness. "Why can't I remember anything? I just want to go home." Mia's chest tightened. A flash of her mother during those last days, confused and trembling just like this, stabbed through her mind. Mia knew what she had to do, but she also knew exactly what risks came with it. If she called the police and they arrived while the older woman was disoriented, who would believe the word of a homeless teenager? What if the older woman couldn't explain who Mia was? And what if they took Mia away, took her to a place she might never get out of? Survive or help? She could only choose one. The wind howled harder, snow thickening in the air. The older woman suddenly shivered violently, her lips turning purple. Mia swallowed. Her hand touched her hoodie, the only layer keeping in what little warmth she had left. Taking it off meant accepting the kind of cold that could kill her. But looking at the older woman, bare feet nearly frozen, frail shoulders shaking relentlessly, Mia knew. She couldn't let her die here. Mia took a deep breath, then did something no 16-year-old should ever have to do. She took off her only hoodie and wrapped it around the older woman. Mrs. Eleanor gasped, trying to reclaim a bit of warmth. In a rare moment of clarity, she looked at Mia. "But you'll be cold." "I can handle it," Mia smiled. "You need it more." A simple sentence, but the audience understands it carried a heavy price. Mia helped the woman stand, guiding her step by step, whispering, hoping. "Try looking around. Does anything look familiar? I'll take you home." But after passing 3, 4, 5 houses, Mrs. Eleanor still shook her head. Both of them were growing exhausted. The wind is colder. The temperature is still dropping. Finally, when the older woman nearly collapsed, Mia realized no one was coming to save them tonight. If they wanted to survive, they had to do it themselves. And that small, fragile decision would lead them into a 7-hour life-or-death night that was only just beginning. Mia knew Mrs. Eleanor couldn't take another step. The woman's legs were trembling so violently that a single stronger gust could make her collapse right there on the frozen ground. Beacon Hill was silent, rows of elegant red brick homes glowing with warm light, yet not a single person on the street. It was as if the whole neighborhood had been locked down by the snow, leaving only the sound of the wind slicing through the air, sharp enough to feel like it could cut skin. She searched for a place sheltered from the wind and spotted a small recess in the wall beside the iron gate of a large house. With no other choice, Mia guided the older woman over and gently eased her down against the wall. "Lean on me, okay? It'll help you rest," she said, her voice shaking but still trying to stay calm. The older woman's hands were so cold they felt lifeless, trembling like a leaf battered by a storm. Mia wrapped her arms around the woman's shoulders, trying to pass on whatever warmth remained in her own body, but the wind kept piercing through the thin fabric of her shirt, making her back sting with cold. She opened her backpack and took out the old wool blanket, her mother's blanket, the most precious thing she owned, the one thing she had sworn she would never let go of. For a brief moment, Mia looked at the blanket with a tight, aching expression, as if she were about to say goodbye to the last piece of her memories. Then she exhaled softly. "Mom, I have to save her, right?" And without hesitation, Mia wrapped the blanket around both of them, pulling the older woman close as if protecting her own life. Mrs. Eleanor whispered, "Sweet girl. You'll freeze." Mia smiled, her lips already turning purple. "I'm used to it. I can handle it." She knew she was lying, but it was the most beautiful lie she had ever spoken. Time seemed to slow. Mia talked to keep the woman awake. She asked about her daughter, Lauren. The older woman tried to smile, drifting in and out, telling soft, broken stories about her daughter, the doctor, with a voice that was fragile yet full of love. Whenever panic clouded her mind, Mia squeezed her hand and whispered, "It's okay. I'm here. You're not alone." But it was Mia who was losing warmth. The merciless cold crept into her fingers, her bones. At some point she realized she was no longer shivering, a dangerous sign every homeless person knew. When the body gets too cold, it stops shaking to save energy, and the next stage is slipping away. A gust hit them, making Mia's body jolt in one last reflex. She turned herself to shield Mrs. Eleanor from the wind, letting the blanket focus its warmth on the older woman. Every slight movement made her dizzy. The snow thickened, large, heavy flakes settled on their hair, shoulders, and the blanket, turning them into two snow-covered statues slowly being buried. Mia tried to open her eyes, but her eyelids nearly froze shut. Everything around her blurred, like looking through glass fogged by frost. In that half-conscious haze, Mia thought she saw her mother sitting beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. She wanted to tell her, "I didn't leave her. I kept my promise." And that feeling pierced straight into the viewer's heart. A moment later, Mrs. Eleanor's voice trembled in panic, almost crying, "You're still here, right? Mia, don't leave me. Don't leave me alone." Mia summoned the last bit of strength left in her body and leaned her forehead against the woman's shoulder. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Her breathing slowed. Her mind drifted. The wind faded. Her heartbeat softened. Everything slipped toward darkness. And just when despair seemed ready to swallow them whole, a bright light swept across the gate. Then, brakes screeching, a car door slamming open, footsteps pounding frantically in the snow, and a voice breaking into a terrified scream. "Mom! Oh my God! Mom!" It was Lauren, Mrs. Eleanor's daughter, running toward them with shaking hands, shattering the darkness of the night and letting the first beam of hope pour in. In her half-conscious haze, Mia felt as if the voice was calling from very far away. But when warm hands gently shook her shoulder and a figure dropped to their knees beside the two snow-covered bodies, she realized it was real, not a hallucination. A woman with hastily tied brown hair, a thick coat dusted with snow, and a face soaked in tears. She wrapped her arms around Mrs. Eleanor, her voice cracking open in the frozen air. "Mom, can you hear me? Mom, please, open your eyes for me." Mrs. Eleanor trembled, her eyes barely opening halfway as she tried to whisper. "Lauren, my daughter." The woman exhaled sharply, as if she'd just been pulled back from death, but immediately turned to Mia. For the first time, Lauren saw the young girl leaning weakly against the wall, lips purple, eyelashes frozen white from the cold. Her mother was wearing Mia's hoodie, the only hoodie she had. Lauren understood everything in an instant. She cupped Mia's cheek, panicked. "Sweetheart, hey. Can you hear me?" Mia tried to open her eyes, but her eyelids were heavy like stone. Her head tilted, her breaths thin as threads. Mrs. Eleanor looked at Mia and suddenly began to cry without realizing it. "Mia, don't go. Don't leave me." That sentence, weak, trembling, helpless, felt like it crushed the heart of anyone who heard it. Lauren looked around frantically. "We need an ambulance! Somebody, please!" But no one was there. The street was empty. The house behind them was dark. All of Beacon Hill seemed to be reduced to just 3 people: a mother, a fading girl, and a woman trying desperately to pull both of them back from the thin line between life and loss. Lauren lifted Mrs. Eleanor to her feet, then bent down to carry Mia. Mia's body was so light that lifting her revealed instantly how much deprivation she'd endured. As Lauren held her, her teeth chattered, not from cold, but from fear. "You saved my mom. Now it's my turn to save you." Mia barely reacted, but when her head rested on Lauren's shoulder, a faint breath escaped her lips, a fragile sign that she was still here. As Lauren ran toward the car, tears streamed down her face, her voice trembling uncontrollably. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Don't give up. You've done more than most adults ever would. You have to keep going." In the back seat, Mrs. Eleanor gripped Mia's hand, trying to squeeze. "Mia, you're still here with me. right?" Mia didn't answer. Her hands hung limp. Her breath paused for several terrifying seconds. Lauren slammed her hand against the steering wheel.
"No, don't do this! Sweet girl, you kept my mother alive all night. Now let me keep you alive. Do you hear me?"
The car shot forward through the snow, leaving behind the small wall recess where the two of them had fought through 7 brutal hours. At that moment, no one knew whether Mia would survive. No one knew if the last warmth in her body would ever return. But everyone knew one thing. If she had walked away that night, 2 lives would have been lost. But because she stayed, hope still had a chance to appear. Mia woke because of a strange sensation, warmth. The deep, penetrating warmth that hurt all over her body, as if heat were forcing its way through layers of ice that had frozen solid through the long night. Her eyelids felt heavy as lead, but eventually she managed to open them. A white ceiling, the beeping of a heart monitor, the sharp smell of antiseptic, something no homeless child ever wants to smell. A hospital. She jerked slightly, instinctively trying to sit up, but the IV lines, the oxygen tube, and a wave of dizziness pulled her back down. A nurse walked over, a woman with gentle eyes and a voice as warm as morning sunlight. "Hello, sweetheart. You're safe now. Don't worry. You're at Mass General Hospital." Mia parted her lips, her voice so hoarse she barely recognized it. The old lady, Eleanor? Is she okay?" The nurse smiled softly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "She's fine. Much better than you, and that's because of you." Tears welled in Mia's eyes, soaking the pillow, not from pain, but from overwhelming relief. The door opened. The woman from last night, Lauren, stood there. No longer frantic, but her eyes were still red, as if she hadn't slept a minute. When she saw Mia awake, she brought her hand to her mouth, releasing a shaky breath that was a mix of relief and emotion. She approached and sat down beside the bed. In that moment, the two of them simply looked at each other without speaking for several seconds. Only the steady beeping of the monitor filled the room, along with a rising tide of gratitude. Lauren placed a paper bag on the table and opened it. Inside was Mia's mother's wool blanket, cleaned, neatly folded, and placed with care as though it were a treasure. Lauren spoke softly, her voice trembling. "I found it, wrapped around my mom. I thought you'd want to keep it." Mia reached out and touched the blanket, her fingertips shaking, not from cold, but from emotion. Lauren continued, her voice thick. "You saved my mother using the most precious thing you had. I just hope I can do the same for you." Mia shook her head gently. I couldn't let her die out there." Lauren looked at her for a long time, a look full of compassion, respect, and unspoken questions. Then she said the sentence Mia would remember for the rest of her life. "Sweetheart, even adults might not have done what you did. You didn't just save my mom. You reminded me what real kindness looks like." She placed her hand over Mia's. "And I promise you, you will not be on the streets again. Not ever." Mia looked up at Lauren, hardly daring to believe what she had just heard. In all her life, no one had ever said anything like that to her. At that moment, the door opened again. Mrs. Eleanor, supported by a nurse, stepped inside with a warm scarf draped over her shoulders. Though her face was still weary, her eyes brightened the moment she saw Mia. She walked closer and took the girl's hand. "Mia, you stayed with me all night. Now it's my turn to stay with you." A simple sentence, yet enough to silence anyone who heard it. Mia broke down, sobbing, without holding back. The whole room seemed to shrink until only the people holding on to one another remained. Hands once cold, slowly warming with trust, with kindness, with the miracle of a night that was both cruel and extraordinary. The long night had passed, and finally, dawn had come for all three of them. After the nurse finished checking the vitals, the hospital room fell back into that strange kind of quiet, the kind of silence that only appears after moments where a life could have been lost. Lauren pulled a chair closer to Mia's bed and sat down, as if she didn't want to miss a single breath of the child who had saved her mother. Mia lay there, holding her wool blanket, glancing at Lauren from time to time as if she was still afraid this might all be a dream, afraid that at any moment someone would walk in and tell her she had to leave. Lauren seemed to understand every one of those fears. She inhaled softly, then spoke with a warm, steady, gentle voice. "Mia, I need to ask you something important. When you're discharged, where will you go?" The room instantly grew heavier. Mia's eyes shifted downward. She clutched the edge of the blanket and said hesitantly, I don't know. I'll find somewhere that still has a bed, or I'll try the train station again." Lauren bit her lip. Her eyelids reddened, not from panic this time, but from the pain of hearing a child speak about that as if it were normal. She slowly placed her hand over Mia's small, fragile one. "Sweetheart, you are not sleeping outside for even one more night." Mia blinked, unable to believe it. Lauren gently squeezed her hand as if passing her certainty into Mia. "If you're willing, you'll come home with me. A real home. I have a guest room with a warm bed and thick blankets, hot meals, a place for you to study. Someone is waiting for you to come back." Mia froze, as if the entire world had suddenly stopped turning. She shook her head slightly. "But I'm not your family. I'm just someone passing by." Lauren shook her head, her eyes filled with resolve. "No, Mia. You're not just someone passing by. You're the girl who held my mother for 7 hours in cold that could have killed you both. You gave her something money can't buy. Life." She paused, her voice tightening. "Someone who can do that isn't a stranger. That's family." Tears streamed down Mia's cheeks, dripping onto the blanket her mother left her. Each drop slow, hot, filled with the confusion of a child who had gone too long without believing anyone. She exhaled shakily, her voice trembling. "Are you sure? I could be a burden. I'm not used to living in someone else's house." Lauren smiled, a warm, gentle, patient smile. "Then let me tell you something. That night, you did something half the world wouldn't dare to do. You stayed. Now, it's my turn." Mrs. Eleanor spoke too, placing her wrinkled but warm hand over Mia's. "Come home with us, sweetheart. I don't want to lose you, just like you didn't let me be lost." In that moment, inside a white hospital room under the soft morning light of Boston, Mia felt something she thought she had lost forever. The feeling of belonging somewhere. She nodded. Not big, not dramatic, just a slight nod, but one powerful enough to change her entire life. Lauren let out a breath, her eyes wet but her smile radiant. "Good girl. From now on, You're not alone anymore. Outside the window, the winter sun poured in, warmer than usual, as if Boston itself was breathing a sigh of relief with them. 3 days later, once her legs were strong enough and her breathing had steadied, Mia was discharged from the hospital. Outside, Boston was still cold, but no longer the kind of cold that cut into her skin. This time, it was just light flurries drifting along the street. And between those flakes was a sense of hope Mia never thought she would feel again. Lauren parked a sleek black SUV at the hospital entrance. The car door opened, and Mia stood there for a moment, hesitant. She had never stepped into a luxury car before. Every detail of this new life made her want to believe and fear believing at the same time. Seeing the hesitation, Lauren spoke softly. "It's okay, sweetheart. Get in. You don't have to rush. Everything will be all right." Mia sat in the back seat, gripping her wool blanket, as if it were the only anchor tying her past to her present. The SUV rolled down snowy streets, leaving behind the hospital and the memories of a night she almost didn't survive. When the vehicle turned onto the cobblestone roads of Beacon Hill, Mia's heart sped up. Then the house appeared. A large, New England-style home with red brick walls, white windows, and a porch decorated with winter wreaths. Mia swallowed. "This is your house?" Lauren smiled. "It's our house if you want it to be." The front door opened even before they reached the yard. A boy around 14 ran out, eyes shining as if waiting for a character from a fairy tale. "Mom, is this Mia, the girl who saved Grandma?" Mia froze. She wasn't used to being looked at with admiration. The boy extended his hand with no hesitation at all. "I'm Caleb. Mom told me everything. It's super safe here. If you want cookies, I can make them right now." A 14-year-old, trying to make her feel welcome. Mia had never experienced something like that. Lauren laughed. "Slow down, honey. Let Mia breathe." When the three of them stepped inside, the warmth from the fireplace wrapped around Mia instantly. The scent of pine wood, the smell of baked goods, soft jazz drifting from the living room. All of it blended into a feeling of belonging, a feeling Mia had forgotten since the day her mother died. But because it felt too good, Mia grew tense. She strolled, as if afraid her dirty shoes might scratch the polished wooden floor. She clutched her worn backpack, unsure where to put it. Her expression was torn between awe and a defensive instinct. Lauren noticed immediately. She stepped beside Mia, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Mia, you don't have to be so careful. This isn't a place where you need to stay polite. This is home." From the staircase, a familiar figure appeared. Mrs. Eleanor, unusually alert today, leaned on the railing and looked at Mia with tearful eyes. "You kept me alive. Now let me watch you live." Mia felt tears rising instantly, but swallowed them down. Lauren led her upstairs and opened the door on the left side of the hallway. Inside was a spacious, bright room with a window overlooking a snow-covered backyard, a warm bed with thick white blankets, a wooden desk, and empty shelves waiting to be filled. "Do you like it?" Mia stood in the doorway for a long time. Then she whispered, "This room is bigger than any place I've ever lived in." Lauren stepped closer, adjusting the blanket on the bed. "You deserve a place like this." Mia walked in slowly, touched the bed, then sat down carefully, as if afraid sitting too hard might make it vanish. She opened her backpack and took out her few belongings, a faded shirt, a small notebook, some papers, and her mother's photograph. Everything she owned fit on a single small table. Seeing those few items inside such a full, warm room made her throat tighten. Not because she was sad, but because, for the first time in 3 years, she felt safe. Caleb poked his head through the doorway, grinning. "Mia, we're having baked mac and cheese tonight, Grandma's favorite. You eat that, right?" Mia nodded, smiling genuinely. I'd like to try." Caleb's excited laughter echoed down the stairs as he ran to tell his mom. That laughter, accidentally, melted the last piece of ice lodged in Mia's heart. She hugged her wool blanket to her chest and whispered, "Mom, I found a home." The first weeks in her new home were the strangest time of Mia's life. She wasn't used to opening a fridge without asking, not used to hearing, "What do you want to eat today?" Not used to someone waiting for her downstairs every morning. But slowly, little by little, this new life opened before her like a door she had never dared to knock on. One evening, as Mia stood awkwardly in front of the living room bookshelf, Lauren placed a stack of books on the table and invited her to sit. "Mia, I want you to continue studying. You can get your GED. I found a very patient tutor. You just have to try." Mia lowered her head. "But I've been out of school for 3 years. I've forgotten everything." Lauren gently touched her shoulder. "It's all right. You just need to believe that you deserve a new beginning." And so Mia began. Every morning at 6, she sat at the kitchen table, opening pages she hadn't been allowed to touch in 3 years. The homeless girl inside her kept whispering she would fail, but her tutor, Mrs. Rodriguez, always smiled, patiently untying each knot in her learning. There were days Mia wanted to give up, evenings when she sat alone in the Hayes family library, crying silently because she felt not good enough. It was during one of those moments that Mrs. Eleanor, on one of her rare, clear-headed days, walked over, placed a hand on Mia's shoulder and said, "Sweet girl, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being scared to the point of shaking and still doing it anyway." That sentence felt like magic. Mia kept studying, step by step, and on the day of her GED exam, Lauren held her shoulder in the parking lot. "No matter the result, I'm proud of you." 4.5 hours in the testing room were 4.5 hours Mia fought her self-doubt more than she fought the questions. 6 weeks of waiting for the results. Mia was so tense that she dropped the envelope as soon as it arrived. Caleb picked it up and handed it to her. "Open it. I'm right here." Mia opened the paper with trembling hands. Then she burst into tears. She passed. Not just passed, she scored high. Lauren hugged her tightly, laughing and crying at the same time. "You did it, Mia. You really did it." Mrs. Eleanor raised a glass of orange juice, her voice shaky but clear. "Congratulations, Mia. The girl who saved us, and now saved herself." In that moment, Mia understood. She wasn't staying temporarily anymore. She belonged here. 3 years passed so quickly that Mia sometimes couldn't believe the story had happened to her at all. From a homeless girl trembling in the snow, she now stood in a small lecture hall at Boston Community College, speaking to 60 social work students. She spoke calmly, deeply. "People ask why I held a stranger in my arms on a freezing night. The answer is simple. I know what it's like to feel abandoned, and I didn't want anyone else to feel that." When the talk ended, a young girl with a worn backpack approached, eyes slightly red. "Mia, I got kicked out of my shelter last night. I don't know where to go." Mia placed a hand on her shoulder, offering the kind of smile she once never dared to imagine she could give someone. "You don't have to face this alone. We'll find a solution, together." After taking the girl to a support center, Mia returned to the house that had saved her life, the Hayes home. Caleb was now excelling in sports. Mrs. Eleanor was only occasionally lucid, but every time she saw Mia, she smiled. My little Mia is home. Lauren, stirring something on the stove, said, You're right on time tonight. I was worried you'd eat too late. Mia stood at the doorway watching them quietly. Under the warm yellow kitchen light, she realized something important. They saved her from the cold. But she saved them from loneliness, simply by being there. A family built from kindness, not blood. After dinner, Mia stepped out to the front porch. The small wall recess from years ago was still there, but now it held a small bronze plaque. Here, compassion kept 3 hearts alive. Mia placed her hand on the inscription and closed her eyes for a moment. Snow fell lightly on her shoulders, but this time, the snow wasn't cold. Behind her, Lauren spoke softly. Mia, you know, that night you saved my mother. But in the long run, you saved all of us. Mia smiled gently. She understood. It's not the strongest person who saves others, but the one who stays when the world tells them to walk away. She whispered, as if speaking to herself and to anyone who had ever felt forgotten. Sometimes, one small choice can save an entire life. Then she turned back inside, toward the glowing home, the waiting dessert, the laughter, toward the place where her heart belonged. If this story touched you, leave a comment. Your words might be the warmth someone needs on the coldest night of their life. And if you want to continue following real, deep human stories, like, share, and subscribe to Deep Life Tales. We'll always be here, telling the stories that matter most.